Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and I'm excited to have Corey Hall, Chicago Aftershock, here on the show today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Big event coming up next. There's always a lot at stake at every single one of these big events. We're going to be headed to Chicago, September 13th through the 15th, and Red Legion sits at the top of Paintball, and they're in first place by quite a bit. There are some teams chomping at their heels, and Chicago Aftershock is one of those teams. Amazing performance by Chicago Aftershock in Atlantic City to make it into the finals, only their third event together. So future very bright for this team. So we're going to get Corey Hall's opinion on the brackets, on how things went. Also make sure to check out ESPN The Ocho, as that final match will be playing on ESPN The Ocho. Early August. Don't have an exact date for that yet. I actually just got out of the studio. I had a long voiceover session today as we're dialing things in for that show. Corey, how you doing, bud?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Matty.
Of course. Always good to touch base with you. So let's jump into it, man. First of all, how are things right now in your head on the team? Obviously, it was a heartbreaking loss, as kind of looked like maybe you guys were destined to take them down. Very few times. I mean, we haven't seen one team. Red Legion was able to win two events in one weekend, as we had to conclude Texas in Atlantic City on Thursday. So they definitely had some momentum. But we're gonna get into the weeds here. Talking about Aftershock and how you guys looked in the prelims. But just to start things out, after that heartbreaking loss, where's your guys' head at right now?
I mean, it's a heartbreaking loss, but also, like you said, it's three events in with the squad, and it's where we want to be. But there's still room for growth. There's still room for the mistakes that were made to be fixed moving forward. And I think the team feels good. The team feels like we're, like I said, exactly where we want to be. And then with Chicago coming up for the next event, I think we kind of set ourselves up to kind of make that story and go into Chicago and get the win, but it's going to depend on us and what we do and how we execute.
It is good that there's a little bit of a break, because it was also kind of strange for everybody because, so you put the team together a little last minute. You had to jump over from New York Extreme, which you appeared to be, till the Aftershock story emerged, seemed to be content to play 2024 with New York Extreme. And same with LJ Parrish on X Factor, and I mean, kind of everyone essentially. And then Todd Adamson decided, it's like, all right, I'm just going to go big. We're bringing back Shock, and because we didn't know if he was going to get a spot. That was all in the works in in the off season. It ended up working out. So then you guys didn't have a lot of time together. You go into that first event and you take 15th, but now a fourth and a second. So now, and it was again kind of weird because, and maybe I don't know. Let me get your thoughts on this. Do you think it was good for the squad to know a layout before you went into that next battle, so you had some more time to kind of train on, the carryover layout that we played on Thursday when you guys took that fourth place? Kind of being able to solidify, because you guys are going mostly with the starting five. I want to pick your brain about that too. Mm-hmm. What do you think? I mean, was that better? Was it worse having that, knowing the layout, knowing what you're...
I mean, knowing the layout, I feel, is always better. Just it makes it a little bit easier, right? You know your shots, the blind shots, the bounce shots, what moves you can make when a certain person is in a certain bunker looking a certain way. But I mean, then we played a blind layout. We go from fourth in a layout that we played for a ridiculous amount of time. I don't know how many points I actually ran on that layout over the time. And we get fourth, and then we go to a blind layout and we get second. So it's you can't necessarily, like, one better helps us than the other based on the results. But I do think there's teams out there that necessarily, if they don't get that, they struggle a little bit. But if they do get the time to break down that field, then they can be unstoppable. I think Dynasty is one of those teams where when they dissect the field and they really break it down, they're one of the best teams at it. But I think when they're not able to do that, it does kind of throw a wrench in it and kind of equalizes things for them.
So, how was the vibe on the team going from the 15th and then obviously doing really well? We can talk about Texas a little bit too. But knowing that, at that first event, again, you guys just got things going. So it's kind of haven't been in that situation myself before. You guys go 1-3. You're able to beat Aftermath, who had a very good first event, but then you lose to your former squad, New York Extreme, by 1. is the first event, Vegas. And then you lose to the Bears by a ton, and then you lose to Impact by 2. But then, so that 15th, because things, because this is one of the questions I also want to pick your brain on as well, is the AC Diesel situation. AC Diesel's now had a year and a half to try to fine tune that all-star lineup that they got, and they're getting better, but it's taken them some time. Whereas you guys go 15th, 4th, 2nd, it's been a little bit more of a hyperspeed towards where you guys want to be very quickly here, is where 3 events into the 2024 season, and you guys are already a favorite. So,
yeah, I mean,
so what do you think about that?
It's. I think we have something that they don't necessarily have, specific for like Diesel, right? I think, we kind of just put it together for the kind of quickly coming into the season, but we go way back, and it's not just talking about us 2020 and us winning, right? All of us, yeah, that Ironman in 2020 brought us all together, but we've all been friends, we've all been close ever since then. Me and LJ are like brothers, right? So I really just think all of that coming back into it. Yeah, that first event we did struggle. We went 1-3, and we really didn't find our place. We were still trying to find different things, and honestly, there was a little bit of animosity here and there between some players and on the team, and some stuff, and some honestly awkward and tough conversations that had to be had. But after the first event, those conversations were had, and we made sure everybody's on the same page. The awkwardness or the animosity towards whoever, whatever it was figured out, and the conversations were had that needed to have. And now that we got past that little growing pains in that part, now it's kind of back towards, we have our core group, that the Ironman squad, but then we have Hosky, we have Trent, who's really stepped up and played great. Unfortunately, got injured, but we have guys that I really feel like are playing for each other and playing for Aftershock, the name, rather than, I think Diesel's mindset is a little bit different, whether it be some of the players or, whatever the case may be.
Kind of want to elaborate a little bit on that, but before, so and if you don't feel comfortable talking about the specifics, I understand. Don't necessarily always want to air team's dirty laundry, but what were those hard conversations that needed to be had? Got to ask the question. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about the specific players, maybe just give me the gist of it, because there's a lot of people out there. Every single team, I don't care what division you play in, but if you're playing to try to do well, which is a decent amount. Some guys just want to, show up, crush beers, and have a great time. And that, hey, man, there's a place for you in tournament paintball if that's what you want to do. But a good portion of all the teams in the divisions, especially sitting at the top of the rankings, this is about success. They do want to tier up. They want to go from D3, eventually be semi-pro, maybe make a run at a pro spot in a couple years. That's kind of the dream, right? But in order to do that, it's incredibly complex and difficult. And a lot of that difficulty lies in interpersonal relationships. So maybe if you could kind of shed some light on, again, specifically what types of conversations needed to be had to have this immense amount of growth that you guys have had so fast.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily, there wasn't too much. It was just either players not holding themselves accountable or pointing fingers. And then just people trying to do too much. Too many. I really feel like that first event, we had too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, right? We had too many cooks in the kitchen, and nobody knew what we were trying to cook, right? And so I feel like there were conversations that were had where it's like, hey, take a step back. Let's just have fun with it. Let's play paintball. Let's do us. Let's play for each other. And then there were some conversations that needed to be had about, okay, you need to stick around the team. You need to be around more. You need to be present. Different stuff like that. And it's just really getting everybody back onto the same page of, we're here to play for each other, right? We're getting paid, but none of us are getting paid leaps crazy amounts of money, right? We're not here for the money, right? I could have stayed on NYX for more money, but I didn't do it for that. I did it because of what we have, what we're able to bring back and kind of rebuild and rework and kind of see, like everybody's talked about, we didn't get a chance to finish what we started in Vegas. And I honestly, it might sound crazy to say, but how we started Vegas this season, I feel like was needed, because I feel like if we came into Vegas this season and we would have won somehow, just coming back right back together and then winning Vegas, I think it wouldn't have set us on the trajectory that we're on now. I feel like it may have been opposite, to be honest. I feel like maybe we could have gotten ahead of ourselves, whatever the case may be. But going from, all the hype of, 2020 Ironmen are back, Vegas, back to the first event, and then for us to get 15th, that's a huge humbling slap in the face moment for us. And that's also conversations that needed to be had. Like, we're not going to just go in and win. We're not just going to go in and run things. We're not just going to, we're under the Aftershock name, which is a legendary name, but this is a whole new squad, and we're living under the name, but we also have to, reinvigorate. We have to bring that name back.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2 decades pretty much since Aftershock was a top team. Yeah, they had flirted with some success, and I think it was 7-man, and I mean, I grew up, just mashing against Aftershock constantly, and they were one of our nemesis. So I, just have a ton of respect, having played against Todd Adamson and Todd Martinez for years, played with Todd Martinez for a bit. But, and I've known Todd since he was 15. So I think it's an amazing story. So before we move on, what advice would you give to those teams, though, coming up the ranks about those hard conversations? I mean, obviously a lot of that's leadership, because at the end of the day, like you said, you got too many cooks, don't even know what recipe you're cooking. You got all these cooks in the kitchen, like, oh, let's make a souffle. You're like, bro, we're not making dessert right now. What are you talking about, man? Let's make some chicken. I'm feeling chicken right now. Chicken? What are you talking about, dude? I'm feeling steak. So, kind of what is that, what advice would you give to, these teams on these, emerging divisional squads that are trying to, win out in their division and trying to actually be elite tournament paintball players that need to have those hard conversations with each other?
I mean, my big thing on that would just be to actually have the conversation. I feel like a lot of the times those conversations aren't had, and so it just festers, right? It bottles up, and it either creates so much animosity that a team folds or a player leaves, or it's just not productive. There's no positive outcome of not having that conversation. It might be awkward, it might be hard, whatever at the moment, but the outcome and the positive that comes from that is well worth it.
And what if the leaders aren't, making that conversation happen? You're kind of looking at your coach or looking at your owner or looking at your whatever captain, and maybe they're too nice of a guy. They're not forcing those conversations. How do you bring that about without, again, making it so awkward?
For me, you either need to step up and be that person.
Erodes the...
Yeah, I mean, if that, to me, that's an issue. If the coaches aren't bringing anything up and they see issues, if the captain's not bringing anything up and they see issues, that's a huge red flag, right? You may need to look somewhere else. But if you're not getting that from them, then you need to step up and be that person, because your team still needs it. And then at that point, if it's still not working, maybe you need to find a better situation for yourself. And that's also another thing that, like, understand your value and understand your worth when it comes to these things. Don't think like, yeah, there's friends in paintball, there's this, there's that, but it's also business, and it also depends on what you want to get out of it. If you're not getting what you're putting in return from the team, people aren't putting in as much effort as you, they're not willing to have those hard or awkward conversations like you are, go somewhere else. Simple.
Yeah, I mean, easier said than done sometimes with friendships, but I mean, you're somebody that, you've had quite the trajectory in your career. I see the Scottsdale Elevation jersey in the background where you cut your teeth, got paintball famous by pulling off some low body situations. You've since diversified your skill set, so you can play fast, you can play slow. I know you still got those 1-on-3s in the bag. I'll probably see one of those at some point this year. But when is it time, before we move on, to kind of break down these brackets, and want to get your thoughts on some of these other teams, particularly some of the teams you played on? I want to get your thoughts on New York Extreme, the Ironman stories emerging there. When's it time to go? I mean, because you've left for different reasons. Either you're tearing up to try to take a risk and, try to be a go-to guy, and then sometimes you're making lateral movements, and then and then sometimes you're trying to, kind of tear up again, based, lateral. It's like tear up, lateral movement, tear up. I mean, when is it time to go?
I think it really, like, it kind of depends on the situation and what you're looking to get out of it, right? The whole reason I left Elevation after our first year was was because first it was kind of weird because all of them were paying. It wasn't like we were all sponsored and we were getting paid or everything was free. Like they were all paying out of pocket for me. And at the end of the season, we have a meeting and everybody, one after the other, is like, "Oh, this season was very financially straining. You know, it's just hard on the pocketbook." And I'm like, "Because you guys were literally paying out of pocket for me." And then we're at practices, and I'm like, "Oh, I want to shoot more paint. Let's practice more." And it's like, "Well, you guys, are you okay with that?" You know, so it's one of
Yeah.
those things where like
Hey, can you buy another?
I
Can you
felt
buy another
kind of
case,
like a
bro? 5 more
yeah.
cases.
And so
Can we
like
do 5 more cases? What do you
not
think?
only did I kind of feel like a burden to them, which they agreed to, they took on, and that I'm forever grateful for them doing that for me. That's the whole reason I was able to play my first pro season. But the other thing too is, you know, me and Mike Urena played on that team, and me and him were always out practicing. We are always out drilling. We're always putting in the work. But a lot of those guys, it was more of like their weekend thing. They had families, they had businesses or whatever that they were doing, and so they weren't or just didn't necessarily put in as much time as we were. And once you start getting to this level and you want to succeed and you want to go further, if you're putting in all this effort and time and you're not necessarily getting that reciprocated by the other people on your team, then it's at that point you're not going to get different results. If you want different results and they're not willing to put in the effort, that's kind of an indicator maybe to either look somewhere else or try to get them to put in the amount of effort that you're going or that you're putting in. And if not, then maybe look somewhere else. That's kind of one situation that was for me. The second one, I left them for Ironman. Obviously, I had tried out for Ironman, didn't make it. They came to me at the end of that season, that first season with Elevation, and wanted to pick me up. And I saw it as not only an opportunity to go for a team that, you know, I tried out for and didn't make it, but also a team where everybody's putting in the amount of effort that I'm putting in. You know, a good amount of us on that team were local, so there was always people out at the field. There, we were always drilling. We were at dye drilling behind the warehouse and stuff. So it was going to a team that not only had kind of that legendary kind of name above it or that history, but just also to prove for myself that I could, and knowing that the team was there and had kind of the same outlook and same drive that I had.
So I want to
And
kind of throw
then,
back a little bit.
I
Something you said
mean,
about. Oh, sorry. Well, yeah. So then you go to
go ahead.
Extreme.
I was gonna say leaving Ironman,
Well,
but
yeah. No. Yeah. Leaving Ironman, then you go to New York Extreme.
Mhm,
You know, and that was a weird one though. You know, we had COVID, and then that kind of again. I think that was kind of like you said, the motivation with this shock roster was that you have another, just
mhm,
like the Ironman, which you guys won their first tournament, I think 10 years, and then
mhm,
uh you know, now it's like shock. Okay, you get Todd Adamson's like, I'm bringing the name Chicago Aftershock back. Who wants in? Who wants to buy into this legendary name? I need some stars. I'm willing to, you know,
mhm.
fork out what it's going to take. Let's do this. And you know, so I get that move. But you know, just before we kind of move on, maybe give me the quick version of why. You know, again, I'm just trying to give people some insight because I get this all the time. You know, you get these divisional players, they ask a lot of questions, and that's awesome. But a lot of times they just, you know, you get these really confusing situations where it's like, dude, I don't know when it's time to go, and I don't know how to say these things I need to say. And these are all, you know, you're kind of you know, getting to be an old salt in this game right now. So these are bits of wisdom that I'm trying to pull out of your brain now because you've been through this, you know, this
Oh
ringer
yeah,
a bit.
oh yeah. I mean, the Ironman one was kind of tricky to be honest, because we won and then COVID happened, everything ended. We lost A-Rod going into Cup, and then we played the next season. And honestly, we weren't sure with, you know, a lot of us went to play on Ironman to play for Todd, right? That was the
Yeah.
understanding. And then obviously that changed. You know, Todd left and Nikki took over. Um, and honestly, that was a huge reason as well for a lot of us staying. You know, specifically me and LJ. And we've talked about it because it's, you know, for us, like I said, we went to play for Todd, but everything that Nikki and Fran had done for us up to that point, and everything that they honestly continued to do, it wasn't something like there was no leaving for us, after Todd left, and we still had for the majority most of the squad, for the season, and we were able to do well. I think just after those couple of seasons, to be fully transparent, I was kind of looking, just to see kind of what was out there, see, kind of what teams were interested in me. Not for me, like I'm very much like there's certain players that like LJ. I always wanted to come back and play with LJ after Ironman. So if there's certain players on certain teams and I see something, then maybe I'll reach out. But it was one of those things where kind of put out some feelers and didn't really get anything back. It's funny, everybody always thinks I'm getting all these offers, all these teams are hitting me up, and it never happens like that. I think it's funny that they think that, to be honest. But had a couple calls here and there. But then that was actually when the whole Saints thing happened. And that was something that almost happened like the Aftershock thing. That happened in all of like 2-3 days. All of a sudden, the A-Rod's calling me is like, "Hey, da 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 da," and it's like, well, if this works out, then send it. Let's do it. And that's when I left Ironman for Saints, which was obviously short-lived. That's kind of self-explanatory. Everybody's heard that story of what happened there. We lasted one event. And after that, I had literally hit up Bo and Harris at the time, and I was like, hey, let's talk. I was like, this is probably the most serious conversation we will ever have about me actually being on NYX. They were like, okay. And Bo called me, I think like next day or that day. It's quick on it. And we started talking, and it kind of made sense for me because of everything that had happened with Saints, and then some stuff that was happening in real life. I needed that competitive edge still, but I needed fun, and that's what those guys were like. And that's by far some of the most fun I've ever had in paintball was on that team. And once we kind of got past the woes and the, whatever, everybody already knows shenanigans from the first season and Harris and all that, and everybody actually started to buy in and understand and believe that they could actually win, which I think was a very big factor for them. I think they were always kind of knew that they were decent, but always kind of just like knew who they were and what they were and didn't necessarily want to change. And that was kind of a big thing that I tried to help with or change when I got on it. I'm like, yeah, you guys are good, but you guys talk so much shit, but then you don't back it up. Like, yeah, you've beaten Heat, you've beaten Russians, and you've had matches here and there. But I'm like, what's the best you've ever done? And they're like third or fourth, I think, is what they did. And I'm like, okay, well, is that good for you? They're like, no. I'm like, well, okay. If you don't want that or you want to do better, then you have to change. You have to do something better. And it's funny because I spent like my entire first season on that team trying to change them, trying to do all this, and it just didn't work. And then going into Cup, I was like, screw this, I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to do me. And then we do well. And they're like, oh, that's the Corey we need. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, that's interesting. I'm like, okay.
All right.
And then the kind of going into the next season, it was more so like, hey, this is who I'm going to be for you guys. This is like what I'm going to bring to the table. This is how, how I think it should be, and this is what I think needs to happen. And luckily, there were a lot of players that had the same exact mindset and thought process going into that next season with NYX, and I think that's why you really saw that leaps and bounds difference from beginning to Cup to leading into that next season for us.
Yeah, it was a good look, and you were, so let me ask you this though, as we kind of jump into some conversations about these teams. New York Extreme is sitting 20th right now, bottom of the barrel. They have 80 overall total seed points. Uprising sitting at 19th. They're at 127. Notorious is not far away, 137. A little bit of a buffer to the ML Kings at 178. 2 more events to go. It would be a heartbreaker for New York Extreme because, again, this is one of the visceral and very real things in pro paintball is that, and we'll get some pushbacks and some fans are like, oh, the teams are so good. Why are we relegating any of these teams? Because New York Extreme was a top 4 team last year. And I'm like, well, I understand what you're saying, but this has to be cutthroat. If we want to put our hashtag grow paintball hats on, it needs to be entertaining. It needs to be, something that people can watch and get excited because there's something at stake. And getting relegated is at stake right now for New York Extreme. Now, they are not unfamiliar with this situation, as this happened to them not that long ago before they started to make the run you guys had. But what do you think it is?
We almost got relegated at Cup. I think we had to beat Hurricanes just to not get relegated.
Yeah, and it worked though. So you saved it, and then you guys were a top 4 team all of a sudden. But what's going on with them? In your dissection of the situation.
I think maybe it's just a little bit of growing pains. Like, yeah, they lost me, but they picked up Thomas, right? They picked up an experienced veteran who communicates. I think it might just be a little bit of growing pains. Also, the layouts are a little bit different and don't necessarily play to NYX's strengths. That they have George, they have Jerry, but as long as Jerry's healthy, and as long as George is playing well, then they have a couple of hitters, a couple of rockets, right? But one of the things on that team was concrete shoes. That was a term used quite often with concrete shoes, and it's just because they don't necessarily have the people that are going to make those dynamic or aggressive moves that a lot of these layouts are starting to cater to. So I think honestly, it's a
which is why you
combination
guys
of a little bit of differences and changes between the team, and then the layouts and just how kind of the play style is going this season.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is at a premium, and it has been for a little bit. You need to be able to play both, though. You guys need to be able to play fast and slow. But Legion just won the last event and the event before that by just pretty much all gas pedal. I mean, just regardless of the situation, how many bodies, it didn't matter. I mean, you guys dropped point number 1. I just spent an hour and a half breaking this down today. But yeah, I mean, you guys lost point number 1 in the finals because and we had talked off camera about this, because you guys, that you guys go up a body, but you guys are stuck in defensive spots and kind of seem to be, kind of almost lulled into that situation where you're like, all right, it's point 1, we're up a body, let's just play smart here. Let's not do anything dumb. Let's just, let's just be really
we played not to lose. And I hate it because I'm hypocritical, because I tell all my divisional teams that I coach, I tell them all the time, I'm like, play to win. Don't play not to lose, play to win. And that's honestly, like, that's exactly what we did that first point. I think we honestly went up 5-on-3. And then it was a 4-on-3. We lost Hosky, and we still just went defensive. We didn't look for the moves. We just wanted to kind of slow play it, be smart, hopefully dink them out. And obviously there's a little bit of strategy there. You don't want to play too many, like, Russian 20 points in a match. It doesn't matter to them. They'll go. So if you can reduce those at all, and keep those to a minimum on top of staying ahead of them, that's kind of a good way to try to beat the Russians. But you have Malloy and certain people out there that are kind of keen on winning 3-on-4s, 3-on-5s, and playing to win, not playing to lose. And you see what happened.
Yeah, if we could just kind of jump into that a little bit and get that conversation going before we do again jump into these brackets. I mean, I could talk to you for hours about all this stuff, but in that mindset that you guys had, it did appear that, and you guys didn't stay this way because you ramped up the aggression pretty fast. And again, you guys will be able to rewatch this and let everybody know, so we can try to get the paintball industry and the paintball fans to show up and show out for this chance we get to get on an ESPN platform. Hopefully you can get some good ratings and keep it going. But yeah, they started off down bodies, still on the point. They took all the real estate. You guys were kind of going blow for blow. Obviously that wind off the blue side was pretty nasty. But that, I mean, it was a factor for sure, but you got to keep playing both sides. And you guys had, there were no points. So there were no restarts from that side of the field. But they just seemed to be a little bit more offensive minded, and you guys had to kind of be a little bit more counterpunch. And then another thing too is that, you have Malloy winning the MVP at that event, J-Rab winning the MVP. I mean, Malloy could have easily had gotten, if J-Rab didn't have a couple last minute heroics in that final match, probably would have given the MVP to Malloy in that Texas event too. Obviously different layout for the actual Atlantic City event. But the point I'm trying to bring up is that if you kind of go man for man, you guys pretty much played the same starting 5, but you did sub out Clay Hughes for 2 points. Hosky's a rookie, like it's kind of a huge ask to go in there. It's like, all right, dude, I would say, all right, kid, but Hosky's not necessarily a kid anymore. He's a kid in the game, but
a little older.
Yeah, but it's like, all right, bro. I need you to go play the 1 on the snake side, and you need to go up against what will, as soon as he puts the gun down, and the second I get to vote on this, like, Alexander Burtnikoff is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and so is J-Rab. So you got, all right, Hosky, here we go, dog. Let's do this. Get your ass in the snake and go blow for blow, point for point, gunfight for gunfight against literally one of the best players, not only right this second, but ever to pick up a paintball gun. That's a big ask, and he did have some mistakes out there, and it did cost you guys. I think it's going to be a really good learning experience for Hosky. I think this is an awesome situation for him. I mean, he's had to already learn fast because he just got on the squad. It's not even like he got on the squad in the beginning of the year. I mean, he wasn't there for the first event. So, the fact that he did have a couple deaths that in certain moments that if that didn't happen, maybe the situation's different. But again, throwing a rookie into that big, like that's finding the deepest pool possible and kicking him in with weights on his back, bro. I mean, that's a really difficult situation for Hosky to be in. Kind of talk to me about Hosky's mindset. Obviously you're working with them now on the squad, but and you've had to be in some deep water yourself, so you're not unfamiliar with this. And as I always say, it's not like Ryan Greenspan, Malloy and J-Rab came out of the womb as first ballot Hall of Famers. They had to earn that, and they had to do it the hard way. So, what do you think about what you guys asked Hosky to do in that final match, and just in general for the event?
I mean, we didn't ask him for anything he didn't sign up for. You're coming into this, you know what's in front of you. You know what Aftershock is about. He's known Adamson. For me, he knows what he signed up for. Are we asking a lot of him? Sure, but you came to Aftershock. We weren't going to stay 15th the whole time. You're going to end up being in this situation, and you got to be ready for it. And honestly, he was. Like you said, he had some really good points. He had a couple points against Dynasty that helped win us the match and helped get us to finals. So I mean, huge props to him. We asked a lot from him, but that's what this is. That's what this league is. That's what pro is. That's what being a top pro team and top pro player is. It's the job, and it's what we signed up for. So I think he is really smart. I think he's going to learn from the mistakes that he had. Some of them were kind of detrimental mistakes, but that's just, those are the ones that hit you a little bit harder. You think about a little bit longer and you learn from.
For you personally, talk me through that last battle for the people that were able to watch it. I mean, or the people that weren't able to watch it. So you're playing the can. And with the way that layout was, the tiniest bunker on the entire field, the little baby cake, that's your back center. And so you guys are keeping A-Rod in that back center, kind of turreting back and forth, and everyone's first shot is right back up the gut, right back at the shooters. Everyone's doing that, essentially. And then you immediately go to your next lane. But it was a very treacherous spot for you to play. I thought you played very well because, I mean, you got shot a few times, but you shot Sergey a decent amount of times. And it was a really fun battle to kind of watch that, that specific fight. It was like you versus Sergey. And, Sergey's a legend in this game. I mean, he's got more time as a veteran than you do, and you are becoming a veteran, but you went blow for blow with Sergey. And then you had to also, and then you're sending, Parrish on these these treacherous runs out to that D side because Kirill was shooting laser beams, running up to that Aztec, that temple, shooting cross field. I mean, he definitely shot LJ a lot of times out of there. That was one of the big keys to their success. But your personal kind of joust that you had to do every single point, I mean, you're looking at incoming streams, you're running out, you're putting your stream back. Then you got to can I wrap? Did Sergey hold up a little bit or is he trying to wrap too? Then you got to dodge that stream. It was just, talk to me about what was going on in that personal battle that you had there in the finals against Legion.
Yeah. I mean, that one, they had probably the most paint coming back towards me and at LJ than anybody. Dynasty kind of picked up on LJ a little bit, but Legion had by far the most paint back at me. And like you said, I was kind of jousting. I was dead zoning a lot. I had a lot of fun with it, to be honest, at this event. But a lot of it was kind of the call and seeing kind of what Sergey was doing. Was he going to the can? Was he going to the tower? Did I need to dead zone? Did I need to get out to the can first and wrap it to try and shoot Sergey, depending on what he was doing? So like you said, it was very much a chess match, kind of based on how quickly Kirill was going into that center temple, what the timing was there, and then what Sergey was doing. Was he going to the can or the tower? If Sergey's going to the can, then usually that means Karslev's going out to the corner. Now we have to shoot wide. That changes my shot a little bit. But if Karslev's going to the can and he looks like he's pulling short, then Sergey has to go to the tower. Then I can wrap, or we can do the inside shot a little bit longer. So it's kind of, like you said, it's a chess game and kind of just the read and react. Are we going to read it correctly? Do we call it off the box correctly? And if we call it correctly, then do we hit our shot?
Yeah, and another thing I noticed is that they consistently had you guys again, like I said, you guys really were going blow for blow off the break with them. The one thing I would say though is that Kirill was doing a little bit more of a proficient job of running and gunning, shooting that angle towards the D side for Parrish anytime you would risk Parrish. And Thomas Kim did a great job of staying alive. And, considering he took a pretty big break, man, he really hasn't missed a beat. I'm incredibly impressed by his performance. But in that final match, he was doing a little bit more of like,
quick shout out to TK.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. TK, he's a good human. I really like that. I like that dude, and I love how he plays the game. But he was doing a little bit more of like, I just need to get in my spot and stay alive. It's like he was like, like I just and that might have been that, hey, when that incoming stream's coming at you, the first priority is make sure that you stay alive. Because if you just hang out, and wait for a beat, and you got to try to shoot that lane. But you guys weren't putting as much pressure on. You shot Kirill a couple times, but he was putting more pressure on your D side off the break. And then Thomas was playing a very similar position. And then my other last question before we kind of move on, I want to get your thoughts on the bracket and a couple more. Got about a little over 20 minutes to go. But is that you guys did sub out Clay Hughes for Hosky. And heading into this year with what we saw to Clay Hughes, when he was, on the Ironman, he was their wrecking ball. He was definitely a standout for them in a rough season last year. And, they, in a rebuild for the Ironman where they basically kind of cut everybody, but they were going to bring Clay back. And Clay was like, I don't really want to have to try out. I'm going to go to Shock, which is a die team, those are both Die's core squads other than Legion. And good for, Die was probably stoked about how it turned out because, this ESPN show is going to be a giant Die commercial.
Die on ESPN. Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, for free.
Easy marketing.
At no extra charge, Die. Yeah, for sure. You guys chose the right horses for this one. But yeah, so, again, talk to me a little bit about the methodology and the mindset of the strategy of just getting Thomas in there alive, and then dealing with the Kirill that was very, a couple times he died because he was so dedicated on that zone. He was very dedicated to shooting that crossfield angle on Parrish, and and rightfully so, because Parrish is a beast, dude. Parrish, the way he's playing, he was lights out on that D side for you guys. A big reason you guys were able to make it that far. He was like, he gets an A+ for the tournament for me. But yeah, talk to me about that, and then talk to me about the sub. Bringing Hosky off, putting Clay out there. What do you think?
Yeah, the big thing about Clay is he's got to build some confidence, and I think honestly, to be fully transparent, I think us bringing on Hosky right before Texas probably didn't help his confidence. But that's also like I kind of had a conversation with him. I'm like, hey, it's got to be one of those things. Like, you got to light a fire, man. Like, so what if we bring somebody else in? I'm like, you got to see that as like a challenge accepted. Like, you got to see that almost as a threat. Like, yeah, he's the same team, but go out there and go and get it, And so, like, for me, I like the sub in the finals, right? Hosky, Ryan had made a couple mistakes that he had Todd had already talked to him about. Simple mistakes, but it's things that cost us points. And then in finals they did the same thing, and then did it again. And so not only probably to make a point, like, hey, I don't care if it's finals or not, do what you're supposed to, right? We have a game plan for a reason. You have a job, do it. If you don't do your job, you're not going to play. So not only to probably make an example of, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to, you're not necessarily playing well, but also, hey, if you're not doing your job or playing well, next man up, let's see if he can show out. Let's see if he can perform. Let's see if he produces.
This is, I've talked to Joey Bluth about this on camera, off camera, but, Joey's a constant on our show because he shoots it straight, but he's a great paintball personality and a great paintball mind. But he's like, look, and this is the thing. I agree. I couldn't agree more with you, Corey, and I couldn't agree more with that mindset. When you're dealing with untested, like, because Clay is still, he's had a little seasoning, and Hosky, at the pro level, untested. So, and heading into this year for Shock, it was pretty blatantly apparent who's going to be getting the lion's share of the spins. I sat down with Todd Martinez when you guys put your team together. We went and got some pizza for 3 hours, and we took the back of a pizza box and we put out your depth chart. And I was like, you guys have a hole in the snake. And it's like, we know that Corey and Parrish are going to be studs on the D side. We know what A-Rod brings. We know that Thomas Kim is also an all-star. Yeah, he just came back after a layoff, but paintball is definitely like riding a bike. The only real true perishable skill, as long as you still have your physical competency, is the snapshot. That's going to come back real quick for Thomas. Not worried about any of those dudes. Now you got a bunch of seasoned vets on the bench. Those dudes can come out and shoot bodies on the break, close out points. Talk about like a Nick Sloviak or Al Fernandez. Like you guys are rock solid. But if you want to win paintball tournaments and you don't have a wrecking ball on the snake side, well, you're doomed. You're never going to win a paintball tournament if you don't have somebody that plays elite paintball in the most important position on the entire field. And so we kind of went through it, and he's like, bro, we'll bring out Clay. If we can get whoever else, then you guys pick up Hosky, whatever, so that's the way it is, man. Like, and it's leadership's job to continue to bring bodies on, to test the vets, to make sure that they stayed focused and dialed. Dude's been doing this for 15 years. It's hard to get the motivation sometimes to, go out on a Wednesday and shoot pie plates at your local field, do snapshot drills in your backyard, But when you bring these young, hungry lions on that just want to go eat and trying to prove themselves and they have a big chip on their shoulders, yeah, you have to have options. And that's just the way it is, man. Like that is the absolute way it is. And yeah, that has to happen. So, I mean, think back, it's like, do you think it was fun for me when I was on the Ironman, when I first got on the Ironman and we were trying to rebuild a legendary squad, and here comes Eric Roberts, Billy Wing was already on the squad. I'm fighting for spots against my homeboy, Davey Williamson. Like it was a kill or be killed absolute survivor island, dude. And looking back, I'm really glad it was, because it brought the best out of me. It brought the best out of everyone, and we were successful, but if Shane didn't do that, if he didn't keep bringing in the Oliver Langs and the Eric Robertses and, and all these guys that are legendary now, then it wouldn't have brought out the best in us. So yeah, and so why I brought up Joey Blute, he said this, and it is a sports cliche, but he says, look, as the coach of this team, it is my job to try to replace you. And it is your job to play so goddamn well that I can't do it. That's how this works. And that's just the way it is, man. And if you can't deal with that mentally, then this is not for you. Like you have to be willing to get into that survivor island, and the best has to come out of you in those precious situations. You really can't be coddled that much in those moments.
Yeah. Well, it's the best way to fight complacency. If you never have new players coming in, if everything's just the same, like, yeah, he did really well like that for a while, right? But then it kind of changed, and then they picked up people. They picked up Tyler, right? Then they started doing well again, right? You have to do that. I honestly kind of think, thinking back on it, like to this day, like I almost kind of think that's like when Dynasty had hit me up halfway through the season on Elevation. I feel like that they hit me up for that specific reason, not to have me like pick me up, probably to have me play. But I remember Tyler and Blake that's the season they were kind of struggling, and I feel like they wanted to pick me up just to kind of bring in somebody to challenge it, to fire them up to play, right? But if you don't have that, if you're not bringing that in, people get complacent. They get complacent with their place on the team, in their role, right? They're not going to drill, they're not going to practice to get better, because they already know they're playing. They already know, unless they're driven and they want to get better, then it's very easy to get complacent. Just know your place is sealed. You're playing, you're starting, and you go out. Now, if you're getting challenged by that, it's either going to go one of two ways. You're either going to get challenged, or you're going to say, oh, why am I getting challenged? I don't need to do this. And you're not going to do it, and you're going to fail. And then now the new person has your job, right? Or you're going to take it as challenge accepted. You're not taking my fucking job. You're going to try, but I'm going to make sure you don't.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it works on all these different squads. Let's jump into these brackets since I don't have you all night. So bracket A, and this is the start of this conversation. We're going to continue to have shows as we lead up again. Chicago going down September 13th through the 15th. So we'll have a bunch of shows coming at you guys, kind of breaking all this stuff down, different guests on. But bracket A, Legion, Hurricanes, Revo, Ironman, and your old boys, New York Extreme. Who do you think's coming out of this bracket? It's kind of what I ask everyone is, give me your top two teams coming out of this bracket. And then do you think a wild card comes out of this bracket? Because if you're just joining in to Pro Paintball, you get four brackets of 5. Top two teams move on. You get 2 wild cards as we take 10 out of the 20. If you are down at the bottom of the barrel in the 10 moving on, you got to play in the wild card round. You got to win 4 games in order to win the tournament. That has happened a few times just in the past couple of years. So who do you got? I mean, Legion's an easy pick.
I mean,
Hurricanes
obviously
have been
Russians
struggling
are
a
coming
bit
out of
though.
it. That's easy.
Yeah.
Russians are
Hurricanes going
guaranteed coming out of it.
second.
There's no way they don't.
Hur-
The toughest
Corey,
the
Hurricanes
toughest for
going,
me is whether or not. Yeah.
yeah, second, 13th, 12th for the Hurricanes.
I know, but
Rough
it's
go
just
the past 2
for
events.
me. It's like they're such a good team. They're such a good team with Mike Bianca
They
behind
are.
him too. Like for me, it's a toss up between. But Revo's been looking good too. That's honestly tough. That's really tough to say. We
Ironman.
might get a wild card out of that. I'd say it's honestly between Hurricanes and Ironman, and then whoever doesn't make it out of those two, them or Revo, makes it in as a wild card.
Well, and New York Extreme has to have a good performance here, or they're going to go into World Cup in last place still, because we only have 2 events left, and then they're going to have to. Then their back's really going to be to a wall. I'm also wondering if you're Bo Milo, do you try to make a midseason change? I know they just got back a starting lineup that's healthier now, but do you want to pick somebody up? And then with Revo and the Ironman, Revo has been more consistent than the Ironman. Revo currently sitting 9th overall, 3 Sunday appearances in a row, a 9th, a 7th, and a 10th. Ironman much more hit or miss. Ironman sitting 14th
did Ironman
overall.
Go 0-4 in Atlantic City?
Yeah. Bro, not only did they go 0-4,
they went third to 0-4.
Third to 20th, third to last. And just real quick, so they lost their 4 games with a -16. Now they're kind of playing on house money a little bit. They're on a rebuild, big rebuild. I mean, that's a real rebuild, like the definition out of the book of a rebuild.
Yeah.
And with the 3rd place, they don't have to worry about getting relegated. I mean, a win for them this season obviously would be, a high placing, and they already did that. They took a 3rd in the 2nd event. So kind of playing on house money a little bit. I actually talked to a couple of those guys at the event. I kind of asked them that question. And they were like, yeah, man, I mean, we come off the 3rd, and then just the layout wasn't conducive to us doing well. They had infamous New York Extreme, Impact, and Dynasty, kind of a tough bracket. But yeah, they just, they faltered. They also didn't really get a lot of production out of it. So their studs, like Tom Guest was a stud for them. Henry Sense, stud. O'Mara, stud. Obviously you don't take a 3rd place without everyone playing well, but those 3 dudes were killing a lot of guys. And then I wasn't saying their name that much in those 4 games in the prelims. They were not having the performance they just had. So maybe a bad beat on a layout for them, but yeah, I mean, I think the safe picks here would be Legion. Obviously, that's probably the safest pick in the world right now. But then to me, it's kind of a giant toss-up because New York Extreme is going to be fighting for their lives. They're probably going to, and their starting lineup's healthy again. So, and they get a big break now to heal up everything.
Dangerous.
Yeah, they got nothing to lose. Ironman, or who knows, dude? Depending on how the layout is, the Ironman could be the Ironman we saw going undefeated. That's what's crazy is the Ironman at the 2nd event. They go undefeated, beating X Factor, Dynasty, New York Extreme, and Fit, and then beating Revo in the quarters, losing to X Factor by 1, +7 for them, and then losing every game -16. Crazy. And then with Revo, super consistent.
You know what? I'm gonna call it.
Revo,
Russian takes 1st, Revo takes 2nd, NYX is the wild card out of that bracket. Calling it.
Ooh,
done and done.
I like it. Okay, let's
seal it in. Final decision.
Seal up Corey's picks. You can bet on Paintball now. Check out Curvo, right?
Kirgo.com. You can also use my code SOAK, SOAK.
There you go. Okay, let's move on to B. Heat damage. Bears, Blast Camp, Uprising. Top 2, and do we get a wild card out of this one?
I mean, heat and damage come out of it for sure. Bears looked decent, to be honest. You never really know what you get out of Uprising. They could show up and make Sunday or show up and go 0-4.
They are due. Also 19th, they're fighting for their lives too.
I mean, they go, I think that's tough. I think Blast goes 1-3. Maybe 2-2. Yeah, I take heat and damage out of it. I don't know that there's a wild card out of that one. I think a wild card comes out of the C bracket.
All right, so C bracket, X Factor, Impact, Aftermath, Diesel, anytime you catch Diesel down in tier 4 in your bracket, because if Diesel finally
Yeah,
figures
I mean,
it out,
this to me might be the grinder bracket. This might be the toughest. If Aftermath comes out playing Aftermath Paintball, how they they're good paintball and they play well. If Diesel actually shows up, I mean that's four solid teams. Aftermath has gotten a top 4. They've podiumed. Diesel should be there. They just aren't. For whatever reasons are happening in that camp. I mean that's the grinder bracket to me. I think X Factor and Impact come out, and either Diesel or Aftermath is wild card.
I mean, X Factor.
How many wild cards do we get?
As look, 2. You get 2 wild cards.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, so 8 top 2 from each, and then 2 wild cards.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
think NYX Diesel
I
as the wild card. I think Infamous goes
2-2
and gets knocked out again, unfortunately.
Well, let's wait till we get to bracket D. But X Factor's been looking really good. They have an insane we're in C. So X Factor's got a ridiculous lineup. They have looked dialed. They're sitting at a 3 Sunday appearances, an 8th, a 2nd, and a 6th. Lost to Dynasty by 1 at the last event in the quarterfinals. Still finished with a +5. Did lose to Aftermath by 1 in probably the slowest rolling game we saw at the entire event, a 1-2 finish. They definitely play. Mm-hmm. They can play both fast and slow. Impact is dialed in right now. Impact, they took a 3rd. They went undefeated through their first 5 games in Atlantic City, beating up on New York Extreme by 5, beating Dynasty by 1, completely destroying the Ironman Mercy Rule win, beating Infamous by 3, completely destroyed Infamous 6-0, shut them out in the quarterfinals, and then barely lost to Legion. That was, other than your guys' final match, that was the closest game that Legion had all weekend long. So Impact looks like they could win a tournament again. Aftermath's been a weird year for them. 4th, 17th, 14th. They went 1-3 at the last event, but every game was a close one, -3. So they're hanging in. They're still running 2 lines, which I mean, hey, you're losing some close games. They had success with that the first event. I can't really, it's not paintball gospel. You typically don't want to run 2 lines. It's not the rule, but it has worked out for them, so I can't really fault them for wanting to do that. So they could pop off a good one that might be due. Diesel, who knows? And then Notorious, they were missing 3 of their starters at the last event, and they're going to get them back for this next one. And they got ABJ, and ABJ is a beast. So we get a strong snake side. ABJ, Archie Barnes Jr. could just be going off over there. So I think you're right. This could be the bracket of death. Tough to call. So who are you going on this one before we head to D?
I think X Factor and Impact come out of it, and Diesel's the wild card.
Okay. So bracket D, Dynasty, Aftershock. This is your guys' bracket. Paintball Fit, Infamous, ML Kings. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think us and Dynasty come out of it. The reason I gave a dig for Infamous is because I do think they beat Fit and then they beat MLK, but obviously we have to beat them. And then I think Dynasty beats them, so I think they go 2-2 and possibly miss the cut. But I think it's us and Dynasty that make it out.
Well, you gotta have faith.
And I only say that because it seems like that's their MO right now, for whatever reason. For the last 2 seasons, I feel like if Infamous either clearly makes Sunday or they go 2-2 and they're just on the cusp, and then they make Sunday and they usually play well, but they're always right there on the cusp. So I think 2-2, and we'll see. They might be one of the lucky wild cards over Diesel.
They were an incredibly lucky wild card at this last one. They were sitting at 2-2 as they beat the Ironman by 3, then lost to Dynasty by 3. So even on the count or on the point spread, and then they beat New York Extreme by 3 and then lose to 3 by Impact. So they went 2-2 with an even point spread, which typically does not get you on. And I remember talking to those guys at Cali Rudolph and come up and call some games, and as they were kind of watching Saturday afternoon play out, I'm like, how you guys looking? He's like, Matty, we're not looking good. We're sitting 2-2, even point spread. We need a lot to happen. Sure enough, though, they get in, and then they beat the Bears in the wild card round by 1, and then get smoked by Impact, shut out 0-6. But Infamous, I do, man. I really, truly do, and I've been saying this all year. I love their roster. Their roster is nasty, dude. They got a ton of offense. They got guys that can play defense and guys that can, those twos. They can stay close to the ones. I really, truly think that Travis Lemansky, coach and owner of that squad, he's assembled a team that can win a paintball tournament. It's been a while for Infamous. They're hungry. They have the weapons. They got the threats and the vets. As I always say, you need threats, you need vets. They have it all. It's just that, is it going to work out for them? Is the layout going to work out well for them to their play style? I still feel like they need a little bit more fine tuning on some situations and a little bit, it's like some teams like to play fast. Some teams are cool with either way, whatever. It's, without getting in the weeds, we don't have a lot of time left, but I really love that roster. I hope he keeps it together in the offseason, regardless of how the year finishes out for him. It would not surprise me if Infamous makes a run at one of these events. Unfortunately, they got you guys and they got Dynasty in their bracket. So I think that the games that Infamous plays, they should be beating Fit on paper. They should be beating ML Kings on paper. How do they match up with you guys, and how do they match up with Dynasty? That remains to be seen. Fit has been very consistent. 12th, 12th, 11th, just right on the precipice of either making or missing a Sunday. That team has a punch. Chavez is a beast. They got dudes.
Yeah,
that can
they're kind of that sleeper team too, though, because like they beat Dynasty. What last event, or was that Lone Star? So they beat Dynasty, so they have the skill for it. They have the people, the abilities. I think if the layout plays to them, like they're definitely a threat, and they're kind of a wild card in that situation too.
And the ML Kings had a better look at the last event too. I mean, they're just still kind of sitting down a little bit deep in the ranking, 17th, with the 19th at 10th.
Yeah, I think they're missing somebody.
They were, yeah. No Harris Hussein. But I don't know. I mean, I felt like that layout would have worked out well for them. It just again, lost the damage by 1. Lost to you guys by 3, beat Notorious by 3, and then got smoked by Heat 06. They just, Charlie Gibbons, owner and coach of that team, that roster just it needs some work. They could fix some stuff in some practices. Got a break here before this next one, again, 17th or September 13th through the 15th, before we get to the Windy City Major. But yeah, I think you're right, dude. I think bracket C is the bracket of death. And some of these other ones are a toss-up. But so it's you guys. So you're pulling you guys and obviously in Dynasty. And then do you think Infamous catches a wild card, according to you? What do you think?
I think they could catch a wild card. I think they end up 2-2 and on the bubble trying to catch the wild card.
Last question here, is we got just a couple more minutes to go, Corey, before I let you go. To you, what's the most, other than Shock, like what's the most compelling story in the game? I mean, all these guys, these teams, dude. These have been your competitors for years now. Like, what do you like if you're a fan? Like, if you just put your fan hat on real quick, because at the end of the day, it's like people ask me, they're like, "Why do you still like doing this?" Because I just love the game, dude. Like I love watching guys shoot paintballs at each other in anger and knowing all the backstories. It's like you're a good example in the sense that my wife's been dealing with this paintball world now for a little over 10 years, and she knows different guys, and for her it's a personal story, so she'll be like, how'd Corey do? How's Todd's team doing? How did Yosh play? Oh, he was hurt. Oh, no, that's a bummer. Is he okay? It's like these interpersonal
awesome
relationships too, yes, but she's a sucker for these personal stories, and so she'll kind of be like, oh, how are these certain guys doing? How are these certain teams doing? But for you, what do you think is the most, other than Chalk, like what is the most compelling story in the game for the fans right now?
Hurricanes.
Yeah,
for me, Hurricanes, watching them go to finals against Dynasty, like so much reminded me of 2020 Ironman. Like being in the finals, a situation that they probably shouldn't be in, or nobody thought they were going to be in, right? They're playing great paintball. They play great team paintball, right? But nobody necessarily thought that they were going to be playing in finals, and then they're playing in finals, and then they're going up. And it's bad because I was still in Vegas hanging out with friends at Airbnb. We stayed a little bit afterwards and we got all them to watch the webcast, and we're watching it, and I called it to a T, exactly how it happened. Dynasties come back, like the point different, everything. Called it to a T. When they were up like 3, I was like, nope, they're gonna come back.
Yeah,
They're
up
gonna lose
3
an OT to
in the
this,
beginning.
da da da, and literally boom, 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 it just happened. But to me, them just their story. They don't have a bunch of money players. It's all a bunch of guys that came up together. There was I think it was on Go Sports, but there was like the documentary or the video on them, and they're all just so calm. They're all just so much there for each other and for the team. You hear Mike Bianca talk to them, and man, if that dude doesn't make you want to run through a wall or just make you just feel all kinds of emotions all at once. Um,
Yeah,
just having him as a
definitely.
coach and that team is, to me, it's something that I definitely watch and is a focal point for me, just because I like seeing kind of like that underdog situation, because I've been in that underdog situation quite a bit in my career. So to see them kind of come into their own and be that team is really cool to me.
I mean, you spent most of your career in that underdog situation. I mean, just now you're
Yeah.
you're finally in a position where you guys Shock and you with your skills like where you've gotten, you are Corey, you're no longer an underdog, dude. So you got to put that superstar hat on and go out and be that superstar. But yeah, it is. I agree with you. I mean, they are a bunch of, as we say, blue collar ballers from the South. They're all gentlemen. They're very nice to talk to. They're hardworking. They've done everything right. They've made a couple runs, but they've had a very interesting past a little bit less than a year. They underperformed at World Cup. They show up and they make it to the finals with Daniel Camp being a hero in a 1-on-1 against Joe Barrett to even get into that final match. And then they go up by 3, lose to in a game that couldn't have been closer unless we went to another set of 1-on-1s against the best team ever to do it, San Diego Dynasty. And people are like, oh, Matty, stop talking about Dynasty's the best ever to do it. I'm like, bro, they are. What do you? I mean, do you want me to stop saying the sky is blue? Like, it is what it is, dude.
I
Until
mean,
somebody
it's like not
knocks,
talking about the Patriots anymore.
bro. I mean, like, I'm sorry, but it just is what it is, dude. I have to talk about things that exist in reality. That's reality. So yeah, and then but also reality is that it is a captivating story. The Hurricanes are absolutely one of the best stories in the game, and they're going to be out for blood in Chicago because 2 missed Sundays in a row. So again, if we go back through the past 4 events, World Cup, probably the worst we've seen them play since they went pro. They show up, take second place, and then and then 2 missed Sundays. So yeah, guaranteed that blue collar team, hardworking as anyone else, is going to be out grinding their asses off to make sure that they not only get to Sunday but make another run. And this is like you had said earlier about, hey, best thing that could have happened to you guys is that you took that terrible place, terrible 15th place, or I think it was at that first event, because it honed your will, it tightened up your intensity, and it allowed you guys to go forth and then second place. I think that the Hurricanes are in a very similar position. And I think we're going to see, as long as that team stays together and they stay mentally tenacious, that I think we're going to see them back, playing for that first and second relatively soon. I don't know if it's going to be in the next 2 events, but it very well could be. Well, Corey, thank you so much for sitting in with me. I really appreciate picking your brain. I mean, again, you was talking about captivating paintball stories. I feel like it was just yesterday. I blinked my eyes and we were on a limo bus going in my birthday to go drink some beers. I think it was for my 40th, and I think it was my 40th, and now here we are 6 years later, and you're one of the best players in the game, dude, on one of the best teams in the game, and you're a big part of that starting lineup. So hats off to you and respect to what you've done in this game.
Thank you.
And to me, I feel like you just got started. I could see you doing this for as long as the body holds up. And as we were talking about before we started, as you're crushing that Chipotle burrito bowl with the extra tortillas, you got the metabolism that I could see you being Ryan Greenspan's age and still getting it done out there. So again, mad respect, brother. Appreciate it.
As long as it holds on, I'll take it.
Yeah, we're not going to see a fat. Yeah, I appreciate you too, man. Yeah, we're definitely not going to see a fat Corey Hall, bro. That's just never going to happen. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your guys' attention. And again, we're trying to do the best we can here. Major League Paintball and Go Sports need your guys' support. Again, mark your calendars for early August. Let everybody know the paintball is going to be back on ESPN. We're going to try to keep carrying this torch forward, man. And that's the whole reason why we do this. Try to keep incremental improvements over time, trying to bring in the newest technology. But without your support as subscribers, we cannot do that. So please head on over to Go Sports and subscribe. We guys try to keep bringing that paintball fire. And I will see you guys next time here on Go Sports Live. Corey, have a great night.
Appreciate you. Bye all.